Earth had changed a lot in 50 years. Since meeting the Galactic Empire, the once isolated planet had transformed from a backwater world into something new, something dangerous. Captain John Miller stood on the bridge of the EDF Vigilant, his eyes fixed on the holographic display. A small Imperial scout ship approached the boundary marker, 2 light-years from Sol system. "They're testing us again," said Lieutenant Susan Lee from the tactical station. Her fingers danced across the control panel as she tracked the vessel. Miller nodded. "They always do. Signal the alert network." Earth's defense grid activated silently. Thousands of sensor buoys and automated platforms powering up throughout the exclusion zone. After the 3rd Imperial violation last year, Earth had established firm boundaries. No Imperial ships allowed within 2 light-years of Sol. No exceptions. "Imperial vessel is still on approach vector," Lee reported. "They're receiving our warning beacons but ignoring them." Miller straightened his uniform. "Open a channel." The communications officer nodded, and a moment later, the face of an Imperial officer appeared on screen. The alien's purple skin and 6 eyes marked him as Zarkian nobility, one of the Empire's ruling class. "Imperial scout vessel, this is Captain John Miller of the Earth Defense Fleet. You are approaching restricted space. Turn back immediately." The Imperial officer's upper eyes narrowed. "This is Commander Vexthor of the Glorious Empire. Your restrictions are not recognized by Imperial authority. All space belongs to the Emperor." Miller kept his expression neutral, though his jaw tightened. "Commander, perhaps you misunderstand. This isn't a request. Earth space is off-limits to Imperial vessels by declaration of the Earth Council. The last ships that violated our boundary were not permitted to return home." "Are you threatening me, human?" The commander's voice carried the typical Imperial arrogance. "I'm stating facts. The boundary is clearly marked. Your own navigation systems have received our warning data." Behind Miller, the bridge crew worked efficiently. Defense systems were coming online throughout the sector. The Vigilant itself was just one small part of Earth's defenses, the visible part. "No primitive species can dictate terms to the Empire," Vexthor said. "We go where we please." Miller sighed. Always the same with Imperials. 50 years of contact had taught humanity much about the Galactic Empire, mostly that giving ground was interpreted as weakness. "Lieutenant Lee, activate Defensive Grid Section 7. "Activated, sir." Ahead of the Imperial scout, a series of previously invisible defense platforms shimmered into view. Each platform was small, barely the size of a shuttle, but together they formed a wall of Earth technology. "Your final warning, Commander. Retreat or be disabled." The Imperial officer's 6 eyes widened slightly, the first sign of uncertainty. "These toys don't concern us. The Empire." Miller cut the transmission with a gesture. They never listened the first time. The Imperial scout accelerated, apparently believing it could slit through the defense grid. The platforms responded instantly, releasing a wave of blue energy that washed over the Imperial vessel. Its engines flickered and died. "Direct hit," Lee reported. "Their systems are temporarily disabled. Estimated recovery time, 30 minutes. Miller nodded. "Send the standard message package. When their systems recover, they'll have our full diplomatic statement, boundary maps, and footage of what happened to the last 3 ships that tried to push through." The communications officer worked for a moment, then confirmed, "Package sent, Captain." Miller watched as the Imperial ship drifted, powerless. They wouldn't destroy it. That wasn't Earth's way. The ship would recover and retreat, carrying Earth's message back to the Empire. "Captain," Lee called out, "we're detecting multiple Imperial communications. They're calling for assistance." Miller turned to his first officer. "Seems they need a stronger message. Prepare boarding teams and alert headquarters." Commander Paula Wilson nodded. "Yes, sir. Do you think they'll ever learn?" Miller looked at the disabled Imperial vessel on the display. "They will. Eventually. Earth isn't the same world they discovered 50 years ago, and it's time the Empire understood exactly what that means. High Admiral Xenthor knelt before Emperor Malvax in the Grand Chamber of the Imperial Palace on Zarkovia. The room glowed with purple light from the rare crystals embedded in the walls. "Rise, Admiral." Emperor Malvax's voice echoed through the chamber. His massive frame filled the throne, skin the dark blue of imperial pureblood. "Tell me about this Earth problem." Xenthor stood, keeping his head slightly bowed. "Your Majesty, the humans have stopped another of our ships. This marks the fourth vessel they've interfered with in their so-called exclusion zone." Exclusion zone. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. No species excludes the Empire. They have established a boundary 2 light years from their system. They are enforcing it with advanced defense platforms. The Emperor leaned forward. "Advanced. These are primitives. We discovered them only 50 years ago." Imperial Intelligence Officer Grek stepped forward, datapad in hand. "That's the concerning part, Your Majesty. Our analysis shows they've been developing technology at an unprecedented rate." Grek displayed holographic images showing Earth's technological progress. "They've not only reverse-engineered our technology, but improved upon it. Their gravity manipulation technology now exceeds our own." "Impossible." Malvax stood, his massive height making even his advisors look small. "They were barely achieving spaceflight when we found them." In the shadows of a side chamber, Dr. Laura Bennett listened carefully. Officially, she was an Imperial science advisor from a conquered world. In reality, she was Earth's most deeply embedded spy. She tapped her fingers silently against her wrist device, recording everything. Grek continued, "The humans have a unique ability to adapt and innovate. What takes our scientists decades, they accomplish in years." "I will not tolerate this insult," Malvax declared. "Prepare the 7th Battle Group. We will teach these primitives their place." Admiral Xenthor bowed. "The 7th Battle Group has 12 warships. Is that sufficient, Your Majesty?" "More than enough to crush a single backwater world." Laura Bennett slipped away from the meeting, making her way through the palace corridors to her private quarters. Once alone, she activated her quantum communicator, a device undetectable by Imperial sensors. "Eagle to nest. Operation Thunderhead is beginning. 7th Battle Group deploying. 12 warships. Estimated arrival at boundary in 3 Imperial days." Miles away in the Imperial Diplomatic Quarter, Earth Representative Kate Wilson received an urgent summons to the palace. As one of the few humans officially allowed on Zarkovia, she maintained the pretense of diplomatic relations. The Imperial Guards escorted her to a meeting chamber where High Chancellor Drek waited. "Representative Wilson," Drek said without rising, "your world's actions have displeased the Emperor." Kate took her seat without being invited. "My world's actions are defensive, Chancellor. We've established clear boundaries. The Empire recognizes no boundaries except its own." Kate smiled slightly. "That's the fundamental problem, isn't it? Earth has chosen to no longer play by Imperial rules." "You would be wise not to challenge us," Drek warned. "The Emperor has authorized military action." "Then the Emperor has made a grave mistake." Kate's voice remained calm. "We've tried to share our concerns peacefully. We've documented 23 violations of our sovereignty. We've requested diplomatic solutions. You'll surrender your defense technology to Imperial authorities and dismantle your exclusion zone." Kate stood. "I'm authorized to make one final warning, Chancellor. Any Imperial military force that crosses our boundary will not return. Please convey this to the Emperor." Drek laughed. "You primitives have grown bold. The Empire has ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. What could Earth possibly do? We could show you exactly why we created the exclusion zone in the first place." Kate bowed slightly. "I hope it doesn't come to that." As Kate left the palace, Laura Bennett's message reached Earth Defense Command. Admiral Harrison began mobilizing Earth's hidden fleet. The Empire was coming. But Earth was ready. Admiral Frank Harrison stood aboard the orbital station Aegis, watching the holographic display as the Imperial battle group approached Earth's exclusion zone. His weathered face showed no emotion, but his fingers tapped steadily on the command console. 12 warships, sir, just as our intelligence reported, said Lieutenant Ryan Wells. They're moving in standard Imperial attack formation. Harrison nodded. Are the defense platforms online? Yes, sir. All 5,000 are active, but still in stealth mode. The station hummed with quiet efficiency as crew members monitored their stations. Earth had prepared for this day ever since they realized the Empire's true nature, not as benevolent galactic rulers, but as conquerors who saw all other species as subjects. How long until they reached the boundary? Harrison asked. 17 minutes, sir. Harrison opened a channel to all Earth Defense Forces. All units, this is Admiral Harrison. Imperial forces are approaching the exclusion zone. Remember your training. We are not here to start a war, but to end one before it begins. The massive Imperial warships continued their approach, their sleek purple hulls gleaming against the backdrop of space. At their center, the flagship glowed with energy readings that indicated weapons charging. They're hailing us, sir, the communications officer reported. Put them through. The face of Imperial Admiral Drex appeared on screen. His 6 eyes blinked in sequence, an expression of contempt in Imperial body language. Attention, Earth vessels. This is Admiral Drex of the Imperial 7th Battle Group. Your planet has committed acts of aggression against the Empire. Surrender your defenses and prepare for Imperial occupation. Harrison's expression remained calm. Admiral Drex, you are approaching Earth's sovereign exclusion zone. Our automated warning systems have already transmitted the boundary coordinates to your ships. Any crossing of this boundary will be considered an act of war. The Empire does not recognize your boundaries, human. We go where we please. Drex's voice dripped with arrogance. Then you do so at your own risk. Harrison out. He cut the transmission. Activate the automated warning system, Harrison ordered. Throughout the sector, thousands of small beacons activated, broadcasting in all Imperial languages. Warning. You are AP Perotici in Earth's Sovir Igin Doyumen. Ewaro. Reviverus Kubuorisi IMMEDOI. On the Imperial flagship, Admiral Drex laughed at the warnings. Primitive threats. Continue advance. The Imperial battle group crossed the invisible line that marked Earth's exclusion zone. For a moment, nothing happened. They've crossed the boundary, sir, Wells reported. Harrison's voice was steady. Activate Defense Grid Alpha. Across 2 light-years of space, the previously invisible defense platforms shimmered into view, not dozens or hundreds, but thousands of Earth's most advanced technology, suddenly appearing like stars coming to life. What is this? Admiral Drex demanded as his sensors detected the platforms. Open fire. The Imperial ships launched energy weapons toward the nearest platforms, but before their weapons reached targets, the platforms activated. A wave of blue energy spread across the sector. The Imperial ships suddenly slowed as their engines faltered. Gravity disruption fields active, Wells reported. Their FTL drives are disabled. Weapon systems are offline. Harrison nodded. Deploy the fleet. From hidden positions throughout the asteroid belt and behind Earth's moon, dozens of Earth warships decloaked. Unlike the ornate Imperial vessels, Earth ships were practical, sturdy, and backed by technology the Empire had never seen. They're trying to retreat, sir, Wells said, but the gravity fields are holding them in place. Target their propulsion and weapon systems only, Harrison ordered. Minimal casualties. Earth's fleet moved with precision, disabling rather than destroying the Imperial ships. Precision strikes left the vessels floating helplessly in space. Within 30 minutes, 11 of the 12 Imperial warships were disabled. The flagship alone continued to fight, its superior shields holding. Launch boarding teams, Harrison commanded. It's time the Empire learned exactly who they're dealing with. As Earth's special forces boarded the Imperial vessels, Admiral Drex watched in horror. The primitives had not only stood against the Empire, they had won. Emperor Malvax hurled a crystal goblet across the throne room, shattering it against the wall. The purple liquid inside splattered like blood. "Impossible," he roared. An entire battle group defeated by primitives. High Admiral Exenthor knelt before him, head bowed low. "The reports are confirmed, Your Majesty. 11 ships disabled, 1 destroyed when they attempted self-destruct protocols. Over 2,000 Imperial personnel captured." The Emperor's skin darkened with rage, turning from blue to nearly black. "These humans have gone too far. No species defies the Empire and survives. The humans' technology was unexpected," Exenthor said carefully. "Their gravity manipulation fields rendered our ships helpless." Malvax stalked down from his throne, towering over his admiral. "I want the 3rd Imperial Armada prepared. 200 warships. I want Earth reduced to ash." In the shadows of the Imperial court, Dr. Laura Bennett listened, her face carefully blank despite the horror she felt. As soon as possible, she transmitted the Emperor's orders to Earth using her quantum communicator. The message reached Earth within seconds, despite the vast distance. President Nicole Reynolds read it in the underground White House Situation Room, surrounded by her top military advisors. 200 warships, she said quietly. "They're not holding back anymore." Admiral Harrison nodded grimly. "We expected this, Madam President. The Empire never accepts defeat." "Can we stop a force that size?" Reynolds asked. "Not with conventional tactics," Harrison replied. "But we're not planning to use conventional tactics." Reynolds turned to her advisors. "I'm declaring emergency powers under Article 7. Activate all military reserves and implement Operation Blackout." Across Earth and throughout the solar system, hidden military bases came alive. Weapons platforms that had remained dormant even during the first battle powered up. The asteroid belt, which appeared to be nothing but rocks to Imperial sensors, revealed itself as an elaborate defense network. Commander Eric Shaw led a team of Special Operations Forces to deploy their secret weapon. His ship, the EDF Shadow, moved silently through the outer solar system. "Begin deployment of the QE disruptors," Shaw ordered as they reached Neptune's orbit. His team launched dozens of small satellites that spread throughout the solar system. Each contained Earth's newest technology, quantum entanglement disruptors designed to break the Imperial communication network. "All units deployed," Commander reported Lieutenant Olivia Grant. "The net is ready." 3 days later, the Imperial Armada arrived at the edge of Earth's exclusion zone. 200 warships, the largest military force the Empire had ever deployed against a single world. Imperial Grand Admiral Zex surveyed the fleet from his flagship. No sign of the human defenses that defeated the 7th Battle Group. They must have moved them to protect their planet. His tactical officer nodded. "Our scans show minimal defenses in the outer system, Admiral. They appear to be concentrating their forces around Earth itself." "As expected, begin advance." Zex smiled coldly. "No primitive force can stand against the 3rd Armada." As the Imperial fleet crossed the boundary, Commander Shaw activated the Quantum Disruption Network. Immediately, the Imperial ship's communication systems failed. "What's happening?" Zex demanded as his screens went dark. "Restore communications." "Unable to comply, Admiral," his officer replied. "All quantum channels are being disrupted. Ships can only communicate by direct laser signaling." Without their communications network, the Imperial formation began to break down. The carefully coordinated attack became disjointed. From bases hidden in the asteroid belt, Earth's smaller, faster ships emerged. They struck quickly at isolated Imperial vessels, then disappeared back into the field of rocks before larger groups could respond. "They're using guerrilla tactics," Zex realized. "Breaking our formation." After hours of fighting, with 30 Imperial ships disabled and another 20 destroyed, Zex gave the order to retreat. The mighty Third Armada, pride of the Empire, turned and fled. On Earth, President Reynolds watched the Imperial retreat on the Situation Room display. "They'll be back," Harrison warned, "with something worse." Reynolds nodded. "Then we'll be ready with something better." The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council gleamed with the light of 1,000 suns filtering through its crystalline dome. 50 representatives from across the Empire sat in tiered seats, murmuring among themselves. For centuries, the Council had been little more than a puppet organization, approving whatever the Emperor demanded. Today felt different. Zalmor, the eldest Council representative, called the session to order. "We gather to discuss the Earth situation. 2 Imperial fleets defeated. The Emperor prepares an even greater force." The chamber grew quiet as Earth Ambassador William Chen walked to the center of the floor. Unlike the elaborate robes of the council members, he wore a simple gray suit. "Honored representatives," Chen began, "for 50 years, Earth has sought peaceful relations with the Empire. For 50 years, we have been met with demands for submission." "Earth defies Imperial authority," shouted a representative from a core world. "The boundary you've established violates ancient Imperial law." Chen nodded calmly. "We established that boundary after discovering the Empire's true intentions for Earth." He activated a holographic projector. Images appeared in the air. Imperial documents, military orders, mining plans. "These were taken from Imperial ships that violated our space," Chen explained. "They outline plans to strip Earth of resources, conscript humans into labor battalions, and eventually colonize our world with Imperial citizens." Several council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. "The Empire has done this before," Chen continued, displaying images of devastated worlds. "Tarsus, Velen, Nimbara, all stripped of resources, their populations enslaved or displaced." "This is outrageous," the Imperial loyalists shouted. "Is it?" Chen asked. "Or is it simply the first time someone has gathered the evidence and presented it to the Council?" Zalmor studied the documents. "These appear genuine. They bear Imperial seals." "Earth doesn't seek conflict," Chen said. "We seek the right to determine our own future, a right the Empire denies to all species it encounters." Meanwhile, in a secure facility beneath the North American continent, Lieutenant Daniel Foster interviewed captured Imperial officers. Unlike traditional interrogations, Foster simply talked with them, learning about their lives and the empire they served. "The Emperor claims to rule by divine right," said a captured Imperial captain named Freck. "But many of us no longer believe this." "Why do you serve him then?" Foster asked. "Fear, duty, lack of alternatives." Vreck's 6 eyes blinked in sequence. "The Empire has stood for 10,000 years. What else exists?" "Freedom," Foster suggested. "Self-determination." Vreck laughed bitterly. "Concepts the Empire erased from most worlds generations ago." Foster leaned forward. "What if there was an alternative? What if the Council actually governed as it was meant to?" "Impossible. The Emperor controls the Council." "What if he didn't?" Across the galaxy, Earth's diplomatic corps worked quietly, reaching out to subjugated worlds. On Tarsus, Earth operative Megan Bell met with resistance leaders in a hidden bunker. "Earth stood against the Empire and survived," she told them. "You can too." "With what weapons?" asked the Tarjan leader. "They stripped our planet centuries ago." Bell opened a case containing communication devices. "Not with weapons. With information. With unity." On the Imperial capital, Dr. Laura Bennett discovered disturbing plans in the Emperor's private database. She carefully copied the files to her quantum communicator. Eagle to nest, the Emperor is planning something called Operation Earthfall. Details downloading now. Back in the council chamber, Ambassador Chen concluded his presentation. "Earth doesn't stand alone in wanting freedom. We've spoken with representatives from 20 worlds. All share our desire for self-determination." Zalmor rose slowly from his seat. Perhaps it is time the Council remembered its original purpose, not to rubber stamp imperial decrees, but to govern justly. In his palace, Emperor Malvax received word of the council's discussions. His rage was terrible to behold. "Prepare the entire imperial fleet," he ordered. "Earth has corrupted the council itself. We will destroy this infection at its source." The greatest fleet in imperial history began to assemble, unaware that Earth was already preparing its ultimate defense. The imperial war room glowed red as Emperor Malvax reviewed the battle plans. Half the imperial fleet, over 500 warships, hovered in formation above the capital world. "Operation Earthfall begins now," Malvax announced to his generals. "Earth has defied us for the last time." Grand Admiral Zex bowed low. "The fleet is ready, Your Majesty. Our new shields will resist their gravity weapons. Our improved communication systems cannot be disrupted." Malvax's eyes narrowed. "I want no survivors, no prisoners. Earth will be reduced to molten rock as an example to all who defy the Empire." Across the galaxy, Dr. Laura Bennett sent her final transmission before being discovered. Imperial guards burst into her quarters as she activated her emergency beacon. Her last message was simple: "They're coming. All of them." On Earth, Admiral Harrison received the warning in the command center of Orbital Station Aegis. President Reynolds joined him via secure holographic link from the underground White House. "Laura's transmission confirms it," Harrison said grimly. "The Emperor has committed half the Imperial fleet to our destruction." Reynolds nodded. "Then we implement Protocol Omega." Harrison looked at the assembled military commanders. "You all know what this means. We've prepared for this day since we discovered the Empire's true nature." Commander Shaw stepped forward. "The Jupiter installation is ready, Admiral." "And our allies?" Harrison asked. 20 systems have pledged support. Their forces are standing by, awaiting our signal." Harrison turned to the tactical display. "Begin evacuation of all orbital facilities. Move our fleet to defensive positions around Mars. Make it look like we're concentrating everything to protect Earth." Across the solar system, Earth's visible defenses shifted, creating the appearance of a desperate last stand. Meanwhile, deep within Jupiter's atmosphere, a massive installation that had taken 15 years to build hummed with energy. 3 days later, the Imperial fleet arrived at the edge of the exclusion zone. The massive armada stretched across space, their weapons glowing with deadly energy. "No response to our warnings," reported Lieutenant Grant from her station on the Aegis. "They're jamming all communication channels." Harrison nodded. "As expected, they're not here to talk." The Imperial fleet pushed forward, crossing the boundary with overwhelming force. Earth's defense platforms activated, but the Imperial ships brushed them aside with their improved shields. "They've adapted to our previous tactics," Shaw observed. "Good," Harrison replied. "Let them think they've countered everything we have." The Imperial fleet moved steadily toward Earth, encountering only token resistance. Earth's visible fleet engaged briefly around Mars before appearing to retreat in disarray. On the Imperial flagship, Grand Admiral Zex smiled in satisfaction. "Their defenses are failing. Victory will be ours within hours." As the Imperial fleet entered the inner solar system, Harrison gave the order they had been waiting for: "Activate the Jupiter installation. Now." Deep within Jupiter's swirling clouds, the massive gravity well generator powered up. Built using technology the Empire had never imagined, it began manipulating the fabric of space-time itself. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. Throughout the inner system, space itself seemed to warp. The Imperial ships suddenly found themselves unable to maneuver, their engines straining against an immense gravitational pull. "What's happening?" Zex demanded as warning alarms blared across his bridge. "Unknown gravity anomaly." His science officer replied, panic in his voice. "It's affecting the entire fleet. FTL is impossible. Sublight engines at 10% efficiency." From hiding places throughout the asteroid belt and the moons of Jupiter and Saturn, Earth's true fleet emerged. Not the few dozen ships the Empire had seen before, but hundreds of vessels, along with massive defense platforms that dwarfed anything the Empire had encountered. And they weren't alone. Ships from 20 formerly subjugated worlds decloaked alongside Earth's forces, surrounding the trapped Imperial fleet. Harrison opened a channel to the Imperial flagship. "Grand Admiral Zex, your fleet is trapped and surrounded. You cannot escape, and you cannot win." Zex's face appeared on screen, rage and disbelief warring in his expression. "This is impossible. No primitive world could achieve this level of technology." "We're not primitive," Harrison replied calmly. "We simply chose a different path than conquest. And now you face a choice: surrender or destruction." Around the immobilized Imperial fleet, the combined forces of Earth and its allies powered up their weapons. The tables had turned. The hunters had become the hunted. Grand Admiral Zex stared at the view screen in disbelief. His magnificent fleet, half the Empire's military might, hung helpless in space, caught in Earth's gravity trap. Surrounding them were hundreds of ships from Earth and its allies, weapons ready. "Your options are limited, Admiral." Harrison's voice came through the communication channel. "Surrender or be destroyed." Zex looked to his officers. Their faces showed what he already knew. There was no escape. The mighty Empire, undefeated for 10,000 years, faced its first true defeat. "I'd request terms," Zex finally said, the words bitter in his mouth. On the bridge of the Aegis, Admiral Harrison nodded. "Your crews will remain unharmed. Your ships will be disabled and escorted to Earth space. You and your officers will be treated according to the interstellar conventions your Empire claims to uphold but rarely follows." The surrender took hours to implement. One by one, Imperial ships powered down their weapons and engines. Earth shuttles delivered boarding teams to secure each vessel. As news of the Empire's defeat spread across the galaxy, Emperor Malvax faced a crisis. In his throne room, his most trusted generals approached with drawn weapons. "What is the meaning of this?" Malvax demanded. General Kren stepped forward. "The Empire has fallen, Malvax. Half our fleet lost to a world you called primitive. The other half will not follow you into destruction. Traitors." Malvax reached for the Imperial scepter, a weapon of immense power. General Kren fired first. The Emperor of 10,000 years fell. 2 weeks later, representatives from across the galaxy gathered in Earth's newly constructed Galactic Assembly. Unlike the old council chamber, all seats were positioned equally. Ambassador Chen opened the session. "We gather today not as rulers and subjects, but as equals. The Empire as we knew it has ended. In its place, we propose a galactic confederation of sovereign worlds." Zell Moore, representing the former council, rose to speak. "For millennia, the Empire forced unity through fear. Today, we choose unity through cooperation. Former Imperial worlds and long subjugated planets alike signed the new charter. At its heart was a simple principle: each world's boundaries would be respected. No ship could enter another system without permission. The exclusion zone that Earth had created, once seen as an act of defiance, became the template for galactic peace." Captain John Miller, now Admiral Miller after his promotion, stood on the observation deck of the new Confederation headquarters orbiting Earth. He watched as ships from 100 worlds moved peacefully through space. President Reynolds joined him, looking out at the stars. "Did you ever imagine this outcome when you stopped that first Imperial ship?" Miller shook his head. "I was just doing my job, protecting Earth's boundaries. And now that concept protects every world." Reynolds smiled. The right to say no to unwanted visitors seemed simple, but it changed everything. Across the galaxy, former Imperial worlds established their own boundaries. Planet after planet declared exclusion zones, not as barriers to cooperation, but as assertions of sovereignty. On the former Imperial capital, now governed by a democratic council, Dr. Laura Bennett watched the changes with satisfaction. Her cover blown, she now served openly as Earth's ambassador to the new government. "Was it worth it?" asked a young Earth diplomat who had joined her staff. Laura nodded. The Empire believed might made right, that they could go wherever they wanted, take whatever they wanted. Earth showed the galaxy a different way. The new Confederation peacekeeping force, led by Admiral Miller, patrolled the spaces between systems, ensuring all boundaries were respected. But unlike the Imperial fleets of old, they never entered a system without permission. In a classroom on Earth, a teacher explained to her students how their world had changed the galaxy. Earth banned the Galactic Empire, she said. We put up a sign that said, "Entry forbidden," and backed it with strength and determination. But more importantly, we offered an alternative: respect instead of fear, cooperation instead of conquest. A student raised his hand. Is that why so many aliens visit Earth now? Yes, the teacher smiled. Because now they ask permission first, and we can welcome real friends instead of fighting invaders. As Earth celebrated 5 years since the fall of the Empire, Admiral Miller raised a toast with his fellow officers aboard the Aegis. To boundaries, he said. May they always protect, but never isolate. The stars seemed brighter somehow, now that they represented possibility rather than threat.